have we learned in the past 30 years of research in this field? And I'm, the evening by providing a bit of context for the panel. Masculinity studies is a relatively new academic field, first emerging in the years around 1990. So what have we learned in the past 30 years of research in this field? And I'm, sketching with a broad brush here. First, what we think of as traditional or normative masculinity isn't natural. That's a very important point that's come out of this research, and was in fact built in the not too distant past, at least in the Western model. It's a little over 200 years old if you look at the origins of what we think of as normative masculinity. Second, some of its most negative features, and sometimes today people refer to these as toxic masculinity, were consciously added during the era of imperialism in the world, and then specifically in the era of Jim Crow in the United States in the decades around 1900. Third, normative manhood was always contested by men, women, and gender nonconforming people as individuals or in groups. There are numerous examples in history of people embodying alternative definitions of manhood. So from these insights, we know that there have been and are multiple ways of living out masculinity, and we know that normative masculinity is neither fixed nor natural. We can alter it if we choose.
Thank you. Real honor to be back. I was lucky enough to participate last year and appreciate the invite back. I feel like I learned a ton myself. Hopefully I provided some shred of insight myself on it. But Kip Ioane, men's basketball coach at Willamette University, but also I think more important for our discussion today, founder of Teams of Men. We exist to create, execute, and help assess healthy manhood curriculum with teams and players across the country. And I've been lucky enough to work with some folks at Dean and some student athletes there. So thank you again for allowing me to join your space.
Go ahead.
Thank you. In reflecting to get ready to answer this, I was really taken back to, I want to credit a call to men. I wish I remembered the exact presenter. I know in coaching, we're used to stealing a lot of plays from each other and never giving credit to who had the original idea. So I wish I could remember the person who gave me this, but it's the concept of once you know, you can never go back to living as if you don't. And I think that it came up to my head because in thinking about my personal story, the first 30 years of my life probably were a blind commitment to full participation in a socialized version of manhood. I was a high achiever, an all or nothing ideal type person. And if I wasn't winning on the scoreboard, if I wasn't winning in the classroom with the best test scores, if I wasn't headed towards a career with the most money, if I didn't have all eyes on the room and me at all times in social settings, then I was not being who I was supposedly ordained to be. So it was really, loudest, smartest, strongest, funniest athlete. And then as I transitioned into becoming a head coach, a similar approach to scoreboard driven results and self-belief. It was kind of an eyes wide shut period that, coupled with at the time was undiagnosed anxiety, contributed to a really exhausting existence. Now that I look back, at the time I was in the throes of quote unquote the grind. And didn't recognize that, but my eyes wide open moments were probably interconnected personally and professionally. I think my anxiety got to a crippling point in 2007, 2008 range, right around the birth of my first son. And that led to, which was a good thing, diagnosis of it and a commitment to therapy from that point on that really opened my eyes to a whole nother way of going about things. I think you couple that with a rash of incidents on campus when I was a young head coach. So here at Willamette University in Salem, Oregon, about 2010, 2011, unfortunately, there was a ton of sexual assaults and a couple of interpersonal violence acts on campus against women. Plus, in the capital that we're in, there was a rash of newspaper articles about some things happening that really all I could ever say to people asking me about those incidents, like, Coach, you're the head coach there, you've been a player there, you're an alumni there, what's going on? And my answer only ever was, well, it's not my guys doing it. But in hindsight and trying to go to bed at night and sleep and thinking and being in a more reflective place, courtesy of therapy, I really recognized that was a really poor answer, that I had promised moms and dads across the country for my recruits that I was going to build a better version of their boy into a man. Then I was doing nothing about that. I was giving them a jump shot, maybe in some cool Nike uniforms, and really doing nothing for the human being. I hadn't been building healthy men. I'd just been training men in more of the stereotype that had harmed me. So in many ways, I think since then, I'm 42 years old now. I've tried to lean into the anxiety part of my life and turn it into curiosity. I think curiosity is a superpower, and I've kind of tried to transform my anxiety, which was really just perceiving and scanning settings, situations, experiences for the next possible threat. I've tried to turn that into curiosity about the why of everything about me, the why of everything that we consider to be tradition, the why of what we believe in. And I think if I can stay reflective and curious, and I can pass reflective and curiosity onto my players, hopefully I'm allowing them a pathway to re-engage with what it means to be a man in their minds, and maybe what their role models taught them. Because I know a lot of my previous ideas and participation in the stereotype was from my role models, and I didn't have these curious and reflective muscles to flex. Yeah, I don't know if I can counter that, right? I think even the concept of that I do a lot of my work on is building a healthier version of manhood. Sometimes I've read some pushback there, where the healthier isn't of itself a cheat to still allow some versions of harm to be caused. So that it's got my head spinning a little bit, Alex, but I don't necessarily disagree. I don't know if I'm arguing for the inverse either, of the complete erasure. I don't know.
I don't know either. I like healthier.
Yeah.
Sounds like safer sex. You know how
now
as sex educators, we're supposed to say safer sex, not safe sex, because there is no such thing as safe sex. So healthier. I'm a fan of that.
Thing, Alex, you mentioned earlier about finding your people, and I thought to myself, it brought up in my mind, oppression in many can be found in many forms, but being on one end of it, being excluded. So I grew up brown in a white state. I grew up Samoan in Montana, which is entirely my father's fault for falling in love with my rodeo queen mother. Right, that's his fault that I didn't get any sun for 17 years of my life. But being part of one group that's oppressed doesn't preclude me from doing the same thing to somebody else. And I know I was so aware of being different, and my lens was up for any racial thing towards me. But I was completely ignorant to me policing the men around me. In terms of this masculine performance, like my teammates, and Kip's going to be the captain and the leader, and me policing the back of the bus with the harm I was causing back there. But all the while, I would have told you I was the victim because of the stuff that was said to me during the game based on the color of my skin. But I was doing that to any non-conformative male in my radius, and I think that happens a lot, unfortunately, with sports teams, where we talk about the greatness of sports, and then we're going to build X, Y, Z, and a lot of the times they're the cesspool of a lot of these things that take place. So, Alex, when you said finding your people, it had me going in a lot of different places too. When I know I was searching for it, but in doing so, pushing others away. I immediately jumped, and I appreciate you guys in the prompts talking about this isn't purely in your interpersonal relationships. I immediately jumped to my wife of 20 years and all the ways she would be laughing right now, listening to me. But I landed on being able to be you and authentically you without expectations from the other. And I thought about that from a coach to my player's perspective. I thought about that with men in groups of friends, where so often now I mentioned before, once you know you never stop, you can't go back to living as if you don't. You're in a circle of men and you see each other in an exhausting state performing what you think the other wants from you. And I don't know if any relationship can withstand not being you and expecting the falsehood from the other one. I think I think you have to be able to, how would I say? I think you want to be able to fail quickly in a relationship with each other and accept accountability and keep moving forward. And I know that's really a nice tagline, and not easy, but if you can't be authentically you in a scenario, I don't know if it can stay healthy.
What do you guys?
I agree with everyone. I think the stories change hearts before numbers change minds. So if you can find storytellers, and that can be through a number of mediums. I think there's storytellers. There's in the social justice wheel. We all have different roles that we're great at, and some people are just naturally storytellers or lived experiences. I would co-sign, but I also you're going to come to that moment where you're going to, just like Brian, you mentioned, you're going to have to be comfortable with looking in the mirror with some mirror training and like, man, I'm not that awesome. Mm-hmm. Things I've done, things I've been, things I've said, coming to that recollection is difficult for all of us, right? I think when our earlier conversation, that part where we all recognize, like, you know what, these masculinity things are universal. I think for a lot of men, that is a recognition they're unwilling to take, because if being a man does not put them above, what does? What in their life does anymore? So I think in my work, coming to that, you know, for myself included, is a really big jump, but necessary. Let's say it's called a feed for a reason. It's what you digest on your scrolls, whatever your social media platform of choice is. I would love to be the person that says, oh, don't do it. I don't know if that's realistic, but what you allow yourself to digest every day will influence how you think and experience the world. So change it up. Include and find folks out there, because people are doing the work. You know, the three panelists I was with today, I'm going to go find y'all in social network, stalk you on there. But I think it's important. It is called a feed because that is what your brain eats every day.